The following is my conversation with Alex Boyce. Alex is a journalist at Moto.it, and he also has his own YouTube channel, Alex Biketester. This conversation revolves around Alex and his career path and the intersection of media and cycling. Alex started his professional career through kite surfing photography before transitioning to motocross. Alex tells us about how his experience in motocross helped him transition into filming and eventually the world of mountain biking. This discussion dives into the challenges and rewards of working with modern media in the world of cycling. This is the Business of Cycling podcast. Alex.
Hello. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm all right. So, who's interviewing who today?
I don't know. That's the thing. It's like a
journalist interviewing journalist.
The hunter has become the hunted.
Oh, no, I like it. It's funny because I really enjoy podcasts. I haven't done any for ages because the wall was broken behind me. For those who are listening, you can't see the wall, but I fixed it and look, it's perfect. So,
well, here we are. We met a couple weeks ago on an event, and we were just chatting away and got a lot of similarities in our kind of career trajectory. How would you define yourself in the business? Media professional?
Yeah, a media professional, but I kind of like the technical side of it. So I feel like based on my experience of work, I'm quite good at like taking something practical, which is in this case biking, and explaining it to people in a sort of a cut down, simple way. Because in some ways it's very complicated. So I have kind of good insight into the tech of what's going on in the bike industry, and I understand it. I mean, I studied science at sort of university and school, college, whatever you want to call it. And so I like to try and I understand. I like to ask questions as well. I want to know more and more and more, and just sort of see what's going on and understand how things are. So, and then if I can, then I kind of have this. I started off as a photographer, so it was like an artistic side. So I was shooting originally with MotoGP Suzuki, which was pretty cool. And back in 2009, 10, 11, and that gave me a great opportunity to see tech. And that was before the internet properly as such. It was not, well, the internet was there, but it was like before the social media had really taken off. It was happening, but videos weren't. So I was doing all paper and photo then. So now with video, you've got this massive opportunity to communicate, and almost like I don't even look at the web myself. I'm kind of stuck inside apps. I don't know who is now inside either podcast apps or video apps or social media. I try not to use it too much. I mean, like I all the sort of meta stuff, kind of. I use it a bit, but I've done 2,000 posts on Instagram the other day, so that's a lot.
2,000 for your personal account.
Yes. Wow. I didn't even realize I was doing it. And I was kind of being lazy as well. Like the amount of stuff that goes through my hands, like things I see, do, and there was no personal stuff on there. That's just bike related work. There's a few personal things, a few party photos from like 2011 at the beginning of it, but you know.
Well, I don't think I even properly introduced you. Where are you from originally? And maybe you can tell us a little bit about kind of where you grew up and then your studies a little more. I usually go through the background a bit just to give people some color.
Yeah. So I grew up in the south of the UK, which is basically south of the M25. So it's a big road that goes around London, because London's massive. People don't realize. Most people talk about city and you can kind of go above it, like in a helicopter or a drone, you can see it. Whereas London, you can't. You go above it and it kind of goes from horizon to horizon. I think it's like 50 miles wide. It's really wide. So there's this big road that goes around it. And basically that's called the home counties, which is sort of like the equivalent of New England, let's say. Like I remember hanging out with my friend my best friend from school and his wife in Portsmouth, New England. That was it, or some Rhode Island, somewhere like that. Back in 2008, and I was walking around, driving around, looking at things, going, "Oh, this looks like the UK. I see why it's called New England."
Right.
So it's kind of that kind of environment. So fairly, nothing crazy, just sort of fairly middle class family. Grew up have it. My father, though, was quite fortunate because my father worked for the BBC and ITV, which are the two big media channels in the UK. And that meant I was exposed to media from a very young age. So he was all tech and production. So it wasn't like, anything, but I was just being exposed to it. And yeah, so that influenced in my head all the time as I was studying through school. And I used to do amateur radio. I know that's exciting stuff back in the day. And
What's amateur radio like? So you would work like on your own, like independently amateur, or you would work
no,
work
amateur
with?
radio, I mean, communicate with people all over the world.
Oh wow! And so what is?
Random people. So like CB used to be CB, but then
Sure,
it like the techier one where you could had to study to exam to get thing. You do that, and I was like talking to people all over the world, and so I kind of talking to random people has been like a thing that I've been doing. So it's
wow,
just like talking on the internet is like talking to a random
sure.
people. It's kind of funny and like getting reaction or not or so it's the tech. It's like the tech, but then there's talking. The two things go together. And studying at school was all
Yeah. What did you study?
well. I basically stayed on the sciences really. So and then I did like geology, soil science, and geography, meteorology, that kind of stuff, like a sort of degree in all of that. And then I did a master's in teaching, which was interesting.
Like
So
totally,
because
totally different from what you're doing now, because now
yeah,
you're a communicator. Because
yeah.
it feels to me like you're a communicator. Like you
Mm.
not tell stories, but you, like you said before, you explain with your you take your curiosity and then you explain things in a
Mhm.
way that makes it entertaining. So I guess it is storytelling in a sense. Would that be fair?
Yeah, I think basically that came from when I was 21 because my father, for my 21st birthday, gave me a film camera. So I'm old enough before digital. And I started shooting and trying to automatically I started looking for the right shots, and I was teaching myself and the right composition. And I was, even though it was film, and I was learning to develop it under the duvet in the bedroom. I was
And
unloading film canisters.
and so you
And
could feel like you felt like you wanted to create it, like
yeah, I
create
loved it.
something.
I kind
And
of wanted to shoot it, and then I wanted shots of me doing stuff because on the same side I was doing sport. So on the side I was like into mountain biking in 2000. No, sorry, 2000, 1993.
yes, the
So I got
Genesis,
I
right?
got my first mountain bike. I bought it myself. It was a Rally Dynatec titanium. £400 it cost in 1992, which I saved up with my own pocket money. So from paper rounds, I was working since the age of 13. So, uh,
Wow.
so
That
even though I
and
came from a middle class family, my parents did not buy me everything I wanted. They supported me, but they didn't buy me stuff,
so you've always been kind of entrepreneurial.
Yeah, I had to work 13 paper rounds. I was when I was studying at school, I was doing a paper round on a Sunday morning, getting up I got up from the age of 13 to the age of 18 at 6 o'clock every Sunday morning, all those years. I never slept in. I got like two weekends and then maybe a year. And then I also had another paper round on a Wednesday, which was like one of those local rags, they call them. So it'd be like, free paper, but it's like there was hundreds and hundreds of them. And you had to go, and it was a little bit in the UK, it wasn't quite like America where you could chuck them at the house and they'd hit the door and they'd
Well, you
land.
can't do that. You can't do that in America. That's just a story. No,
But
you
it's not
can't.
paper boy because I used to play
No,
paper boy.
no, I don't think so. They don't let you do that. You have to you break windows or break doors. But it
Well,
sounds like you were a hustler. Like you were literally like you
yeah,
just where did that hunger come from?
that's a good question. I don't
It was
know.
just
It
it
was
was just
like,
you were just born into you. I mean,
I
because
think it was my father pushed me as well. It's like, you know, he
yeah, but
said to me, "You either pay rent or you go to university." I was like, "Okay, I'll go to university then." But that was like the first thing I remember him saying. So before that, this is a good story. Pocket money. So I was about 11 or 10. and we're hustling my dad for pocket money. Okay. So this is great lesson for every parent out there. So, and we wanted a raise, and we were getting £1.20 a week. So, which in 1990 or 1989, I think it was early in that 1988. That was a fair amount of money, you know. And so I was hustling him to get it, and he's like, "Okay, I'll give you some more, but wait, let me calculate it." Gets out the calculator, works out the rate of inflation, and gives me £1.33 instead of 1.20. So I was just like, "Whoa, genius!" Now I'm thinking, what a genius teaching maths back then. My mother would just swear about it because it was like she had to find £1.33 every time. I just
Yeah, right.
remember getting annoyed, but it was kind of clever. So yeah, there's that sort of entrepreneurial hustle.
Totally. And so you never
Yeah,
probably saw yourself as like an employee.
no,
No.
like
But did you
I
ever
couldn't
have like a
understand it.
did you ever have like a traditional employee job?
I had one like where I was actually employed with a contract, probably when I was a teacher for about a year. But I only did it for a year, and I was like, nah, screw this. I'd rather be a supply teacher. Now, who wants to do that? And I decided it was more flexible and more fun, and I could do what I wanted. So, and the trick, so I could, and at that time I could, because I was also reconstructing a house. Like I'd bought a house. So I was
Okay.
trying to completely rebuild this house in 2000. And also, so I stripped out the interior because the roof and the walls were all good. I stripped out the interior and rebuilt it. But at the same time, I was trying to work on the side. So I would basically work like half part time. Yeah, 3 days working teaching job because it's quite good pay. And then the other 3 days, like, yeah, the other
Re
3 days doing the house really and give myself the day
remodeling.
off. Yeah, remodeling. But it was like strip the whole thing back, rebuild the whole thing. Those skills have served me well. That's hence the wall behind me is perfectly flat and
Huge.
amazing because I can plaster. Can you imagine? I can actually plaster. I was in 2014, I had a few family issues and I was living with my best friend and he needed his house remodeling and he's got this, he was left this vast villa and it had this sort of 30-foot entrance hallway, which sounds absurd. And the ceiling needed plastering. So I was up this wobbly tower replastering
Oh my
it.
God.
And I was like,
Break.
it's perfectly smooth. It's still good today. You can go and look at it. And it's like, so I know at the end of the day, if everything goes wrong, I can be a plasterer.
Yes,
So
you can pay the bills. Totally.
yeah,
So
but
so it sounds like you had this like total entrepreneurial. I mean, you're remodeling
yeah.
houses, working, and then so you settled into this teaching job and you could already kind of feel like this isn't for me. Is that
Yeah, because basically what happened, I was kite surfing. So it didn't start with biking, my interest in like pro sports stuff. It all started in the business side of that. It all started in kite surfing. So I was kind of sick of teaching. So at the time, the my partner said to me, "Hey, you should go and teach kite surfing or something. I don't know, just something related to kite surfing." Because I was really loving technical side and kite sports surfing as a sport was exploding. It was started, it's around 2000. So I did this like training course on how to teach kite surfing and then I started like doing that and then I switched to Italy. That time I started coming to Italy quite a lot
for
and
kite surfing or just
yeah, for kite surfing in summer, and then I started teaching it a bit, and then backwards and forwards for a long while, and yeah, and then I started shooting because I was taking that photography at the age of 21 and like transferring it because digital appeared, and I
sure.
bought a camera and started shooting people on the beach, like looking for the ultimate composition. That's what I was into, and then I started printing the shots and trying to sell it to the people on the beach. And then I hustled. This is how it got there. I hustled this guy called Marco Comellini, who was working at a motocross magazine, the biggest one in Italy. And I hustled him. He's one of my friends now. Been friends for like 20 years. I hustled him. It's like, hey, you doing anything? Like, and I was showing him my kite surf shots, extreme stuff. He's like, oh, that's really good. We're starting up a new magazine for motocross. You should come and join us. And then at the same time, I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then I went to a kite surf event in the north of Italy, and there were some freestyle motocross riders there. I took some really cool onboard shots, and I started like trying to find technical ways to deal with artistic problems,
Sure.
and because I was into the art. I wanted an image where you go, bang, look at that, it's amazing. And then at the same time, I was having to do technical solutions. And yeah, so I put cameras on bikes with remotes, but these were full size DSLRs. So because
Like
the
film or
GoPro
no, digital at the time?
digital, but
Digital.
the GoPro didn't exist. If you wanted a
Sure.
good quality
No.
picture, it was just printable. That wasn't there. So I printed that stuff. I got that, sorry, I shot that stuff, got loads of it printed all over the magazines, Motor X. In fact, to this day, if you Google the birth of my son, you can find a picture which is printed in Racer X mag, and it's still online in the gallery. They put it in their news. It was pretty cool. So I ended up being in Racer X and Moto X in the UK and Racer X, and there's another one in Germany, and then in the cut 3 or 4 Italian magazines. I was really pushing, and I was like hustling as well. I just wanted to go straight to the top. So the equivalent in Italy, it's called Gazzetta dello Sport,
Sure.
and there's a insert magazine on every Saturday. It's called Sports Week, which is the equivalent of like one of the best sports. It's got amazing photography. It's an amazing magazine, and it has the best stories and everything. And I wanted I set myself a goal. I want the photo of the week in there, and I got it. And just hustled. I hustled my way into the office of
RCS or Gazzetta.
RCS.
Yeah,
Yeah.
RCS.
I hustled my way into the office, met Giovanna Calvensini. I remember her name. And she saw I grabbed me a portfolio and she looked at it and she went, oh, this is pretty good. So, and then that was just get the interest. And then when I got this amazing shot one day at this race in Faenza, where it was full of mud, it was absolutely insane. I'll show you. I can send you a picture of it actually, if you want to see it. And then I emailed it to her, and she just said, "Send me the didascalia." What's that in English? That's the caption, and that was it. I got in. I got the front. I got the double page, double track in like this magazine, which was printed millions and millions of times. Which was because it's it was crazy. Yeah, just constant. I feel like if you set me a target, hey, Alex, go and know someone or go and talk to somebody, connect as this person, just do it. I'll go and do it. I don't know. I can find normally a link to somebody somehow. Like,
And yeah, so it goes back to the hustling. It's, you're kind of, what's the word I'm thinking of, but it's where you're talking yourself into a goal. You're kind of setting yourself some goal. And
yeah,
so you get into photography, and you had a little bit of a sporting background, and so you were
yeah,
finding ways to kind of shoot in more innovative ways,
yeah.
and you had
That's right.
this connection to Italy, which
Yeah.
for a kid from the UK,
Yeah,
Italy's
it's like, what the hell? What
it's a nice,
it's like,
but no, but it's a nice place, right? I mean,
yeah,
if you
yeah.
want to, like, it's
Amazing backgrounds. That's the
right,
thing. It's
it's
got
perfect,
amazing
it's
backgrounds.
beautiful,
Like
and
you can shoot, even if it's grey and muddy, somehow the background is better than a grey and muddy wood in Germany or a grey and muddy wood in the UK or a
without a
grey
doubt,
and muddy wood in the middle of Wisconsin. I don't know, wherever
no,
it
it's
is.
true.
Somehow it just has this character which doesn't come out in any other grey and muddy place. I don't know why, but that's the way it is. So
And we'll get to this later, but you live in Italy now full time.
yeah, yeah, no, I do. Yeah. So back and forward for many years, but traveling around working. Like one year I took 27 flights. So it's kind of like, where was I living? I was like, well, I don't really know. It's like anywhere and everywhere but the thing is, it's the hustle is one thing because lots of people talk about hustle. In fact, if you go onto the internet now, you see the hustle economy, you see it on social media all the time.
Sure, it's become, yeah. I mean, it's again, it's sort of a lifestyle that is kind of interesting
But
to read about, I guess.
something very important about that economy is like you've got to have something solid to give people. Like it's all very
Totally.
well hustling. You can hustle and talk your way into anything, really, but it's such if you don't have something solid, some product, some idea, some way of communicating, something that somebody wants, it's just like you're just talking, you know, out of your posterior. There we go. That's a polite
Absolutely.
way of saying
And
it.
I guess watching or talking with you and seeing, your kind of trajectory, was positioning always something that you had been kind of attentive to, like to make sure that you stayed in one sector? Because I know you work in moto and you work in
Mm,
cycling, like in those kind of
yeah,
those two areas.
yeah.
And in me personally, I've settled into one, with cycling as well, because at a certain point you have to build some authority in one of these, like in this area. You have to
Yeah,
build
yeah, yeah,
relationships. You have to, and the world is so big that
yeah.
if you don't, it's just going to be like
Mm.
you're going to dilute yourself over a course. So did you do that consciously, or was it just something that happened?
Basically, so honestly, when I started shooting motocross and freestyle motocross, I didn't care about motorbikes. I didn't give us two hoots about it. I was into surfing and surf sports, and I just loved the water. And some of the most beautiful things I've seen and shot and done are on the water. But then I realized the economy is not in
Right.
surfing.
There's no money. Yeah. It goes back to what you said before. It's like somebody has to pay you to do this.
You got to get paid somehow.
Yeah,
So I thought, well,
absolutely.
maybe I can transfer these cool shots into motocross. And luckily, I hit freestyle motocross, which is a really creative, exuberant sport, but there's like big brands behind it. So even though it's an offshoot and it's pretty like fringe nowadays, but in the days there was this thing called Red Bull X Fighters, which was a big business run by Red Bull, and I got into shooting some of all the pro riders that did that. So I've met Travis Pastrana, Robbie Madison, all those guys who are like the top of their game. Done specific interviews and photos with those guys, and just at different events. And then I met Troy Lee Designs, people working with them, and then they said, "Hey, come do the MotoGP stuff." So I was doing MotoGP stuff with Suzuki MotoGP. That was pretty cool. But then like the motorbike world kind of crashed in around 2009, 10, 11. It was
Well, the
sort of
whole world,
popping.
the whole world
Yeah,
crashed
it
around
went
2000.
wrong. Anyway,
Yeah.
but cycling, no.
Okay.
So Troy Lee is a apparel company doing safety gear, things like that. And it's like, but they have their moto line and they have their cycling line. So Troy Lee says to me, "Hey, go shoot some Steve Pete stuff because he's one of our sponsored riders at the Downhill World Cup in Val di Sol." So I'm like, "Who's Steve Pete? Sounds familiar, but I haven't heard of him." So I rock up and I realize the cycling world is completely different to the moto world and the auto world. And it's like basically much less professional. Like, and I
It is.
realized
Yeah.
I've been working in this high pressure, highly
Sure.
professional,
Well,
highly skilled,
Moto
high quality environment. And then,
MotoGP. Yeah.
yeah. And then cycling is like, just like,
Thrown
it's like
together.
hippie land.
Yeah.
I don't know how to say it. And I was just like, geez. So I was like, because the first thing I was like, I need my pass to get around and do stuff. So I go in and like I realized I got this pass. Okay, I've got the pass. Now go everywhere. No one checks it. So I was like, okay, well, there's no need to have a pass then, is there? So it was like I just things like that. I started to realize how it was. But then it's actually a more personal environment. So it's
Sure.
way more dependent on
Relationships.
personality,
Yep.
relationships. And I saw that there was a big, and at this pinning point was the growth of enduro. Enduro was starting. And just through different connections, I managed to like be in the part of that. And the very first Enduro World Series race, I helped orchestrate that in Natala with a friend of mine who like he paid and I got the contacts in and showed them the place and just hung out with people. And I was hanging out with Santa Cruz, like Rob Roscop, so who's now specialized, which is really interesting. So, and just like connecting on those, and they were just into growing this, they were into growing cycling. So I was kind of watching what they were doing with enduro, the sort of cynicism towards it on one side, and then obviously its product. So they're trying to develop it. It was very early stages, so the bikes were still a bit 2010, 11. The bikes were a bit, they're more like the modern, they were like a little bit more travel than the modern cross country bike, you know? So, and it was interesting. So watching that, and then I started to say to a friend of mine, okay, let's take the model. Here's the business point. So the Guardian, which is a newspaper in the UK, it runs on the business of uh, not selling papers. There's a big load of companies behind it, which was set up by the founder back in the 1800s, that actually supported the Manchester Guardian. So if it sold newspapers and advertising, then great, and it could pay for itself. If not, there was this backup behind it. But the point was that you could, you know, the enthusiasm of the owner was to communicate with the world. So the enthusiasm of the owner in Puntala was to communicate with the world. So I kind of sold him the same idea. I said, hey, why don't we do the same thing and do our own like online site? This is before content marketing had really taken off. It hadn't really done anything. No one had done it. And I said, let's just do that. And then, but the content, the marketing is the fact that all of the tests, all of the stuff we're doing it in Puntala. So you can see it's product placement. Like, where are we? Every time somebody reads or watch a video or sees something, okay, they're there looking at the product, but they're on these amazing trails which are in Tuscany. And from there, that was the sort of concept I pushed to him, and it kind of worked. And now, if you go to Puntala, it's like swamped in cycling. You know, Tuscany now, that part of Tuscany is famous for cycling. So, and it's kind of because he had the foresight to, it's called Thomas Duddy. He had the foresight to invest in this kind of idea using marketing budget from his business. And side effect is they did the very first Enduro World Series there, loads of people there. Everyone knows about Puntala, place to ride in Tuscany by the beach. You know, trails are really amazing, which is great as well, you know. So, and I was just there like still doing the whole shooting and communicating and like that whole sort of thing. And it was supported by the company, which was, you know, the holiday company, but we had the magazine side. And then from there, I got connected into other magazines because people were like, hey, Alex, you're English. Hey, can you shoot for me? You know, because you
Yeah.
speak the language.
Well,
And
sure. And just being that's where kind of you and I are similar in a sense that like we're foreigners from English speaking countries. You're from the UK, I'm from the US.
yeah,
And just having kind of that hand into the world of, just English speaking can be
yeah,
helpful. It can definitely be helpful. So you, at that point, you're working, photography was kind of your initial, photography was your initial sort of
yeah,
skill.
yeah,
And then you started seeing more and more about how this whole machine works in terms of
yeah.
media, how
Well,
companies use content, how it fuels sales, I suppose, because that's at the end of the day, without that, none of us will, be able to work.
I think the key people, if I look back at the history of video and social media and YouTube and all of this, the key people, in my opinion, in cycling sports that made it like, wow, video is cool and you can do good stuff to promote areas is a group of riders called the Coastal Crew from northern or from BC. And they were riding and shooting these really slick videos. And I said, I can do that. So this is in like 2010, 2009, something like that, because they were using DSLRs. They just come out that you could shoot video on, and I had one because I was using it for, for
Well, sure. It was a time where video was still sort of reserved for
yeah,
cinema,
yeah,
right? And so these guys were doing it in an elegant way with
yeah,
not a lot of money.
exactly. So I said, let's do the same stuff. So I
Who did you
promoting
who did you pitch it to?
the guy from Puntala, Thomas Duddy. You have to say, like the mountain bike world. Okay, this is an interesting point. So I think all business requires somebody passionate behind the scenes to actually start a business off, because like if you follow the rules of society, you're never going to do anything. You're just going to be an accountant or a lawyer, you know, because like innovation comes from pushing limits and experimenting, and
And
whole
failing.
businesses and failing. Yeah, exactly. And whole businesses, like I learned a lot going back then, and he started investing and paying me and other people to like shoot stuff and do stuff. Not always, not a constant pay, but keeping it coming every now and then. And I started then traveling and doing the magazine stuff at the same time. So there's lots of things going on. But it was like basically at the time, it was like, okay, you can shoot, you can create this content, and then magazines were sort of still there, but like paper ones, but dying a bit. And they hadn't made the transition. And I was just like full bore, let's do everything online. And then we were using Vimeo instead of YouTube, which was a
Sure, because
mistake
yeah, Vimeo at the
because it
time
looked
though,
good.
Yeah, it will, and it had, I think, yeah, it was just cooler because
Mm.
YouTube was kind of
Mm.
clunky at the beginning.
Big mistake.
Right.
Massive mistake.
Totally.
Massive mistake.
Totally,
I
totally.
listened to I
Yeah.
listened to this design web guy who was really good. So, because I built this website for this whole thing called IMTB, and the web guy from the UK who built it, really good design skills, Andrew Caldwell, I think is his name. And he ended up working with Google and he's top design, amazing designer, really good at doing website stuff. When I built this, when I launched the site that he'd built, which I'd like specified and we worked together to design this whole thing, it went, it's probably broken now. It doesn't work, I'm pretty sure. But it had a look to it and a style which was amazing. And like the first day, it got 8,000 views on it. I remember very specifically, and I had loads of requests. Oh, can we be on there? But one of the key things I was doing is like I wanted on this website where you could see all of the trails, and for every trail there was a video, a set of pictures, and clear description of each trail. And then so you've got a product, that's your product. And then you had news. It was like before Trail Forks. It was Trail Forks before Trail Forks.
So
So
sort of a blog slash
yeah, a
guide.
blog guide that where you could put everything in, and it was laid out in this super slick way, and it looked great. And we won a web award for it. It's called the in the UK, not the Webbies. There's another one called the Lovies or something. I don't know. It was a web award back in for design
And
of the site.
this was your personal project.
Yeah, I did. I pushed it or I managed it,
And
and
you put the money up for it.
well, yeah, I convinced somebody to do it because all investors leverage someone.
No, sure, of course, yes.
Like I
But it
have put
was
up.
but it
Wait,
was
I have
yours.
actually. Yeah, well, it was Tom's, but without me, I wasn't. It weren't going anywhere. So
Right. So you had the
when the server crashed, and the whole thing wiped itself, I was the one swearing at the web guy, like, and then he had a backup, but there was a month of stuff missing.
sure.
But so it was mine because I was the one swearing at him, like literally swearing. I
But
was like,
this is the genesis of online mountain bike content in a
yeah,
sense.
it was. So, and then NTB Mag, a Swiss-based magazine for covers Italy, wanted me to do stuff for them for their English American site-based thing. So I started doing stuff there, and at the same time, all in the background, I'm like just trying to push ideas of sell. I was selling social media content and making stuff, you which is what people are doing. I was selling this back in 2010 before people were even selling it. I was selling it,
Sure.
because I just saw it as content marketing. I just saw it as a great thing, and you didn't have to. But everyone was a bit confused about it. It was like, oh, well, how's this going to help? It's like they were all really confused, and that was when Facebook algorithm was different. Instagram had only really just started, and it hadn't really done
11,
anything.
yeah. 11, 12.
Yeah. And I remember and I was looking at Twitter a bit, but I didn't really like Twitter. I thought social media was really stupid. So I thought that when I was watching the pro riders like tagging each other and writing to each other on Twitter, this is back way, way back. And I was like, why are they talking about each other? They're just trying to make each other sound good. This is ridiculous. They're such egotistical weirdos. What are they doing? That was what I thought, you know? And now I'm like, okay, maybe they were egotistical because at the time you had to be, otherwise you wouldn't do it.
Sure. You had to put yourself out there.
You had to put yourself out there.
Totally.
And now it's normal. Everyone tags everyone for everything. But
Yeah.
back then, it was like, this is
It's kind of weird.
outrageous,
Yeah.
psycho,
Yeah.
egotistical, narcissistic, absurd. What are you doing it for? You need somebody to talk about you, but you do not talk about yourself. That was my
Yeah,
thought,
no,
thought process.
it makes sense. I honestly it's funny you say that because that really was the genesis of it.
Yeah.
But so you're sort of in the middle of this
Yeah.
and you're seeing brands probably a little bit confused. And then they did sort of, I guess my question
Brands
to
are
you,
still confused.
they
Sorry.
are confused, but
Still, even today,
right.
after
But
all this
they pay the
time.
bills, so we're not going to name any names.
They've moved on. They've improved a lot, but
They
there's still a lot of
have.
confusion there.
Well, they have, but I
Like,
guess
do we have a video guy for a product launch or don't we? this is like the big question, you know, it's still there. It's like, oh, for goodness sake, you know?
Well, the one that always gets me is like, are we really still doing the videos in horizontal? Like, is anybody going to do anything vertical? Like in portrait? Like, it's like that was a huge, because that was a huge shift that I think people are still struggling with.
You can still
But
turn your phone if you want. Like there's still videos out there
no,
that
don't do that. Please don't.
that.
Please don't. Um,
But now
so
the cameras have enough resolution that you can actually just cut the vertical, so it's all right. You can do both with one
I
shot.
think we're agreeing to disagree on the vertical thing here. I think we found out.
All right. Wait. I did a video yesterday
Okay.
and I put my camera vertical on the front of my helmet, which was very unusual. I'd never do that.
You have to. That's we're all just staring at these little
Yeah.
rectangles vertical now. It's just, you know.
Mm.
But so you're in 2010, you're in the middle of the vortex of the storm of what digital content, the digital
Mhm.
content revolution. And at what point did you begin working with e-bikes?
Well, that was about 2010, and there's a dude from Swiss dude called Ernest Hurtmacher who was riding around on these Flyer e-bikes, which had these massive batteries on them, Panasonic motor, and they had the Italy tune. So there was like, they were just completely like illegal, basically. You could ride around at like 60 kilometers an hour
Oh wow.
up trails. I was just like, wow, this is fun. Even though the geometry was terrible and, you know, but I started realizing there, I was actually looking back through some of my hard disks that, you know, if there was like, I could still find the original test I did of that back then. And I couldn't, it wasn't, somehow the video footage isn't on there. I don't know why, but, and I can't find it. And I scanned like 12 terabytes of disks trying to find it. So, yeah, it's pretty bad, like thousands and thousands. I looked at my, so somebody the other day posted on their social media, oh, I've got 20,000 photos on my phone. And I was like, oh, wow, that's a lot. I thought, I've taken over my life. So I went into one of my library files on Lightroom, because I've had Lightroom since the beginning. And there's 890,000 photos.
Wow.
That's just one. And I know that I started that library when I already had 500,000 on another library from before. So that's how much media photos I've clicked myself, more than 1 million shots plus
And
video.
will you just at some point, I mean, will you be able to ever dig into those and do something with them, or they're just going to kind of sit there and
Well, they're archived luckily by year.
okay.
So if there's a year in there, I changed. So in the beginning, I started archiving by year. So I started having a year folder, and then in that, I had a month folder. And then at some point, I got lazy and I started writing project names on the folder. So if I remember the project, then I can go in there and find the shots. So, and every now and then I find stuff and I post it just for fun. The
Sure.
other day, somebody said to me, "Oh wow, you look really in good shape," because it was
Yeah.
from 2012. I was like, "Oh my gosh,
Uh,
that's ridiculous." So I was like, "It's from 2012." But I was talking to the camera in 2012, and like at the time, I remember I felt like a bit of a weird person talking selfie into the camera, talking video. But now when I look back, I was like way ahead of the time.
yeah,
I've got to
vlog.
even
That's a
I've got a
vlog.
vlog. I've got
Yeah,
a vlog from 2007 that I made, which is like, which was before vlogging even started. And
sure.
I've got a vlog. So I don't know how I was thinking ahead. It was kind of an accident more than anything. So, but it just felt really egotistical and really ridiculous. Like talking to a camera with no one holding it about nothing, like
It's
your experience. It's just like, what are you doing? It's like,
well, my wife always, whenever I'm in the US and I leave a voicemail for someone, my wife always looks at me like I'm crazy because you're sitting there and you're recording this whole message. And it's a similar thing where it's like if you've never done it before, if it's not culturally relevant, it always
yeah,
seems weird at first. But now, I mean, I see your videos and you're, super like it's really engaging because that's what people want
yeah.
at the end of the day. They want to feel comfortable, but they also want to have someone that is approachable. So
Sometimes you get lucky because your voice or your character means appeals to people or cuts through in video quite well.
sure.
So, like, so something which I never really considered. But then I started thinking about it more and more and more. Like, why are certain people chosen for being in movies or being on TV and things like that? And a lot of it is the look, the voice, the way they cut through the medium. I don't even know how to explain it. They're just the camera. As a photographer, I know sometimes you can have, like, if you find a fashion model, for example, and you look at a fashion model, it doesn't really matter what they are, male, female, whatever. You look at the fashion model, you see them in real life, and you go, wow, they don't really look like anything. They kind of just whatever. But you shoot them and you look at them through the lens, and something about their features pops. It's something that you can't see in reality, but pops on a camera,
On paper.
on a
Yeah,
paper.
on film.
There's like a line in their cheekbone, or there's a jawline, or there's a look, or there's something that just pops. And you go like, wow, and that, I think, also comes across in personality, and you can train yourself into it a lot. So you can train if
Sure.
you
Well,
practice.
well, in my experience, it's been a genuine and spontaneous, at least in what I'm seeing in media. And maybe I can, you can talk about this, but right now, as opposed to in, 10 years ago, it needs to be spontaneous because people are hammered by so much content all day
Yeah.
long. And is that something that you've found as well in your kind of travels, that at least today, to draw engagement, aside from any natural talent, that you do have to be sort of
You got to have some natural talent, but you've got to, I wouldn't say I have any, but there we go. It's like, just happen to be a bit crazy, maybe. Is that talent? I don't know. Anyway, but it's a joke, really. So people don't think I'm actually like that bad. Don't worry. But you need some skill. You need to pick topics and titles
that are
and
engaging,
yeah, but it's got to be something that you've got to have an insight. If you've got an insight, and that can be learned just by experience, by being in the industry, by whatever,
Sure.
you'll have an insight. Like, I have never met anyone in my life who doesn't have an insight into something.
Of course.
Okay. And it could be the parking attendant, it could be the cleaner, it could be the CEO. Everybody has an insight into something. And if you know how to ask the right question, you can figure out what that insight is. And they have something valuable to say. And it doesn't matter the level in business or whatever, but everybody has something valuable to say. And I don't think that's like, because people have experiences, they've seen stuff and done stuff which just you haven't. They've seen things you haven't. Like, even if I'm in a car park, I'll say, oh, have you been busy recently? To figure out, like, are there lots of people parking? Especially if it's like one of those serviced car parks, you want to go in the middle of a city, because then you can figure out, are there lots of tourists? How's the economy doing? Just by talking to the parking attendant.
Sure.
You would never know that. People don't think that way. But I'd be like, no, that's an important question, because they've seen, yeah, we've had loads of people parking this month. You're like, oh, okay, that means there's a lot of tourists,
Or there could be an event or something else.
Exactly. There's, we've got, so I'm sure if you want to park in Florence for the next week, it's going to be impossible, because it's the start of the
B-cycle.
Le Tour de France.
Yeah, exactly. And B-cycle.
So it's pretty cool. So that's going to be interesting. And in fact, loads of people have been hitting me up saying, oh, I'm coming to Florence, like cycling business. And they're like, are you there? And I'm like, yeah, I'm here. I'll say hello, because it's in the city where I am, which is mad. Like, you've got this massive event. And something I noticed, they have resurfaced the road all the way from Florence to Rimini on the first stage. So all the way up the mountain, it's all completely new tarmac.
Oh, nice.
Which is really interesting. I thought, wow, they've really spent a lot of money on this. The Tour de France must be important,
It's massive.
So,
Absolutely.
And
massive.
I wouldn't, my very first proper bicycle was as an adult kid. Can we say that, an adult kid? A bigger kid, was a road bike. So when I was like 9 or 10, I had a road bike.
What brand?
It was a rally flyer, and it had the cables that came out and over and down, and it had the shifting on the down tube, 10 speed.
Steel?
steel, of course.
Of course, yeah.
So, and toe clips. So, but it was good. But my father still had an even better bike from Dawes from the 1960s that he bought when he was at school. And it had a Reynolds frame on it, and it had
Oh,
mud guards. It was a sick bike. He bought a good bike way back in the 60s.
sure.
So, and I was yeah. So anyway, that was the first bike. So yeah, the road biking. So, but I realized because everyone keeps telling me, and I still don't believe it. Oh, road biking's massive. It's much bigger than mountain biking. And
Is it
I
though?
look at it. I don't know. Part of me's like, I still don't want to shave my legs. I'm not doing it. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
It's
road
like,
bikers are unique.
but let me say something. I actually believe road biking is more dangerous than mountain biking.
Of course. I mean, yeah, I don't know the stats, but being on the road is,
It's sketchy between sliding out at corners, going too fast, overcooking it, hitting somebody, cars hitting you, dirt on the road, just you're going fast and you've got this very tiny braking surface. Like if you think of a road tire, the contact patch with the ground, you brake with that, you are sliding. You
sure.
are not braking hard. Like you brake hard with mountain bike tires, you've got this massive contact patch, you push your weight back, and it's super stable, you can control it.
Sure.
Road biking
And the
is,
gravel, kind of the movement towards gravel has been
yeah,
sort of for that reason.
yeah.
But I know that if we can get back to where
Sorry,
we
yeah,
were at
sidetracked. Sorry.
because right now, I mean, when we spoke before, you said that you've been working on the e-bike side of things
Yeah,
for almost 15 years.
yeah,
And so you saw e-biking kind of take off
yeah.
and from kind of, and as of right now, e-biking is, in your opinion, with regards to, at least, I guess it depends on the country, but is e-biking mature in terms of the
Hang on a minute.
growth?
I just need to close that door because somebody's decided to put a sander on.
Oh my goodness.
You said find a quiet space, and then the neighbors put on the electric
I couldn't
sander.
I couldn't hear it.
That's good noise cancellation then from the microphone.
Yes.
So basically, so e-biking is mature. Not yet. It's in the cycling world as a business, it's mature. I.e., people know it takes up a very significant portion of income of most companies that do off-road. Okay.
Okay, so can you help us understand what you've seen in these years, in a sense that it brought new people to the market
Yes.
as well as converted people?
Yeah. I think new people to the market is actually the biggest part of the business rather than actually converting cyclists.
Yeah, I mean,
So
for me, it's like to do some of the trails that I've done on an e-mountain bike, I could never do on
no.
a traditional,
Uh,
human
well,
powered bike.
my mother bought an e-bike back in 2012. It was a Cube Stereo E140. It was the very first sensible mountain bike, which had mountain bike geometry, mountain bike looking suspension, rode like a mountain bike. And she said to me, "Oh, Alex, what shall I buy?" And I said, "Well, go and buy that." And she had to do a special order to get this thing into the UK. And she got it in, and I rode it last week. I actually did a video. You can find it on my channel, and comparing it to the latest bikes. And it's quite interesting. She bought it way ahead of the market. And then I was asking her, and it had a hydraulic seat post. It had all these cool components. And I said, "Oh, what do you think of the hydraulic seat post?" And she says, "Well, it allows me to sit down and put my foot down when I'm stopped at a junction."
Nice.
And I was like,
Interesting.
interesting
Yeah.
point. Most people are like, yeah, I want to, the seat post was for that. It wasn't for
Sure.
geometry so downhill you can go faster. It was so I can stop at a road junction. Now, let's be honest. How many people are going to be riding a bike in the vast market of cycling there's going to be way more people using a hydraulic seat post for that purpose than there will be for going up and down hills. Because if you take into account urban cycling or just getting around on your bicycle or just riding from point A to point B for along a river or a road or some kind of cycle path for tourism. Like no one's throwing themselves off a mountain, really. It's a very small part of the market. So the technical innovation, like at that point, it was like, oh, okay, so that's why you're using it. That's good. And I said, well, what about the rest of it? She's like, yeah, the brakes are really good. I was like, oh, okay, cool. So, disc brakes, 180 mil disc rotors, super powerful. And she at that time, she was like 62, not quite retired, and I thought, wow, if my mother's into it, then
Yeah,
once other people try it,
it's going to be huge.
she's going to take off. And because, she's scared of everything. I've told this story before, but she's literally scared of everything. She's actually crashed worse than I've ever crashed, which is kind of important. So, gravel road, rode into her husband, gets braked, front brakes skidded forward. Guess why you need hydraulic brakes on bicycles with ABS? Because for exactly that kind of thing. My mum and Jeff, they ended up in the flipping hospital because they crashed into each other.
Yeah, the ABS is I've locked up, and it's sort of it happens to everybody because it's instant.
And if you're not sporty or reactive and you're not aware, you're going to probably not know how to react in that moment unless you've been trained. If somebody's trained specifically, sat there and trained you for it and practiced with you, okay. But otherwise, it's just a shocking surprise, literally. But tech can help alleviate that things, even though they're trying to create ABS for mountain biking on trails. Not sure. I've been told that it works really well by somebody who's test riding it for Bosch, but I don't know. I see it more useful for that kind of use case. So when Bosch actually started selling their ABS brakes for mountain bikes or urban e-bikes, I was like, oh yeah, that's obvious because it already happened to my mother like 8 years ago.
Sure.
She crashed because these bikes are heavier, they go faster. There's a lot more going on that, so the tech is already mature. The market just needs to have it explained to them. The communication is not there yet that matches e-bikes with the public, and it's the mass market.
That's interesting because I've seen this before, that brands tend to skew towards the enthusiasts. Do you see that as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think if the brand wants to sell its e-bikes, it's got to focus on communicating to the general public the benefit of an e-bike. Okay.
Sure.
So how does it do that? Right. I did an experiment. I didn't have a car or access to a car for more than a month. And I borrowed a cargo bike. And I thought, right, what can I do with this cargo bike for a month? Where's the limits? What's comfortable to do? So I'm 30 kilometers. E-cargo bike, a Trek Fetch 4 Plus, which has got a big bucket in front of it.
Sure.
You can carry, I think the total system weight's 200. Sorry, I'm being techie here. Total system weight's 250 kilos, or 500 pounds. This thing costs 7,000.
Sure, it's not cheap.
Dollars. It's a top end one. It's an amazing bike. There's more expensive ones even again from, was it Riesenmuller? They do like an 11,000 euro one or dollar one. Cargo. And there's cheaper ones that around $2,000, $3,000. There's a lot cheaper. It's still a lot of money, but it's basically, when you look at this bike, I replaced the car for a month with this bike, and I reckon you could do 70% of what you need to do in normal life with this bike instead of the car. But there's a caveat, and that's distance. So I think that in a city, once you get more than about 10 kilometers or 6 miles outside of your point of travel between, you've got to start to be an enthusiast to want to go beyond, because you're going to start getting hotter, sweatier, more uncomfortable. Like up to 6K or 6 miles, sorry, you can ride one of these big bikes in turbo, barely sweating, enjoying yourself. The motor does everything. Because the tune on the software is different to, say, a mountain bike. which is complementary. This takes over, and that's the difference. Still keeps you fit because you're moving, but it's like, and you can obviously change the mode. But if you hit turbo mode, this thing rides it for you, and up to about 10 kilometers. After that, you start to have to like, you feel it, you know, and you start to realize it becomes long. So 10 kilometers, you'll be matching the time it takes to get through traffic on a car with this electric bike. It's about the same between going from point A to point B, including parking and all those elements, walking from your parking location to your destination. It matches or is a bit longer than the time on an e-cargo bike.
Sure.
And you can still carry kids in the front of the e-cargo bike, which are strapped in. It's safe, because it's so massive. I realized that traffic, and they're talking Italian traffic here, which is pretty mad sometimes, respects you. They see you. They avoid you. It's way more presence than you'd imagine on the road than a normal bicycle. And I started to realize you can carry a lot of stuff. Like you can load up 200 pounds of stuff in the front of it. It really is impressive. Anything is bad weather, maybe it's a little uncomfortable, but depending on where you live, the climate. But I basically noticed myself really saying, oh, this can replace my car for 80%, 70% of the journeys that I do day to day.
And so then that will be, but generally for people that live in urban centers.
Yeah, urban to sort of peripheral of a city.
Sure.
You can junk the car for 70% of your journeys. And you'll be there quicker on time. But there's this point, every time I say this, somebody says, oh yeah, but my bicycle will get stolen.
Well, that was the thing you were telling me about. Like that is the theft and the safety are the two kind of biggest. Yeah. And for theft, what are you seeing in terms of innovation out there? Because you're telling me that there's a need. Are companies kind of trying to serve this need?
Some are. Bosch are. They've got a module on the side of the bike on the motor, which if you activate, gives you a location report, and it's got a SIM card in it. So it's not just IoT, which is Internet of Things. It's a proper SIM card in there.
Sure.
And it like will transmit the location of the bike as soon as it's moved. And that's very good. And it works. Shame I didn't have it switched on when a bike got stolen recently.
Oh, you have to actually activate it for it to work?
Yeah. And you have to walk close to the bike, and the Bluetooth on your phone connects to the bike. It tells you it's you, and then you can ride the bike.
Okay. And so it's not like, the Find My iPhone, but that's sort of the direction that they're going.
Yeah. That's a start. And then a company called Canyon, they've got a module on their new Shimano motored bike, but I think that's them innovating that. But these are all high-end products.
Sure. Yeah, we're not talking
That's
about.
the problem.
Well, that's where it starts typically.
$4,000 plus dollars,
right.
Euros. You've got these possibilities, but there is some company called Track T, I think is another one I've seen that does like modules you can put in there. There's a few companies out there that have these modules, but they're a bit fiddly. You need something which you just don't have to worry about, and there's still more innovation, but it's the leaving the bike in a safe place, not having it attacked by an angle grinder to get or a flex, they call it, to cut the lock off, having a safe place to park it, being accepted, like the society should accept you. So I'm going to call out a wine company now. I rode on a mountain bike to show my friend Antonori, the wine company's big seller. And I wanted to ride up to the shop to go and buy some wine and just have a look at it's an amazing architectural thing. And they said, no, you have to leave your bikes in the car park and there'll be a bus taking you up. And I'm like, A, I don't have a lock with me. And B, I'm not leaving my expensive mountain bike, which was a test bike in that time, in a car park where there's no attendant watching it with their eyes. I'm not doing that,
Sure.
And their policy, this company policy, was to not allow people to.
Right.
You can walk, but you can't ride, even though there's cars and delivery vans and like important people going up. And I was like, that's really annoying. And the guy at the gate was just doing his job at the end of the day.
Sure.
So
yeah, there's a policy and that.
So he was doing his job, but I picked up the phone, called the marketing people directly, found on the website, found a number, called it, said, right, I'm standing outside your gate and I want to come in with my bicycles. We're in a tourist area here. This is absurd. Yeah.
And you were right. And you were right. But yeah, so it's a matter of culture and safety is another one, which, I live in Italy and, I mean, some of the infrastructure is happening slowly,
Yeah.
but we're not there yet. I don't know if you've in other parts of the country, maybe in Tuscany, I don't know how it is, but here in Torino, not as much.
I mean, Florence has done pretty well. They've basically invested, they've removed car parking along streets, which was sort of,
Wow.
I don't know how to, which was nose into the curb. And they
Course.
have put it parallel to the curb. And that space, they have now built dedicated cycle lanes all over Florence. So you can now traverse one side of Florence to the other on cycle lanes. So,
So it almost feels
and
like there's like friendly cities and not so friendly cities, friendly
yeah,
countries and not so friendly countries. So it's sort of like happening in gradually,
yeah.
but the
I mean,
but the momentum is moving towards, mobility.
yeah.
It feels like.
It's really important that the administrations of, it doesn't really matter your political affiliation. And what I love about cycling media is I have no political affiliation. I could just say I don't have to talk about politics.
It's
It's brilliant.
agnostic, yeah.
I don't have to.
Just more
Like
bikes,
just bikes,
more
basically.
bikes.
Even though people try and be like, oh, you're a roadie, so you're arrogant and you're a mountain biker and you just don't wash. And I don't know. Do you know what I mean? It's like there's like, or you've got a beard, or you're like, what's the word for the guys on gravel? They're sort of,
Well, there's
uh,
the kind of the newbie roadies are Freds. I know that one.
yeah.
But yeah, no, gravel, I don't know the lexicon, but
There'll be
yeah,
some
it's
style look that sets you apart and puts you in the camp rather than that other camp. And I don't know. That none of that really interests me. It, as long as I mean, honestly, I've had as much fun riding an urban e-bike or an urban bike, riding around, having fun on one of those, even those mo bikes where you can rent them on the
sure.
spot with your phone.
But they kind of leave them around
Uh,
the city and
yeah, I
kind of
can still
swap out for
bunny
that.
hop them off a curb. It's fun.
Those things are heavy.
Yeah, bunny hop them, even though they're like, got just rolling resistance is off the planet. But anyway, but have fun with those. And two wheels, fun, practicality. It's amazing. Like, honestly, one of the most practical reasons I ever realized e-bikes, sorry, and urban areas fit together was when I went to San Francisco and I rented an e-bike and rode around San Francisco up and down the hills in every direction. And I saw the whole city in about 2 hours on an e-bike on my own.
So that was sort of like the utopia of
It was
e-bike.
like, wow, this is insane. It's like, you know, so, and San Francisco, I haven't been there for that was 2017. So I don't know what it's like now. But, the administration, it wasn't that was just companies selling tourism related stuff.
So it's
And
gonna, so I guess what we're kind of saying is for at least, I mean, e-mountain biking is another thing, but in terms of e-biking in general for continued widespread adoption, there's a huge infrastructure element to it that you're
yeah,
saying.
yeah,
And it feels like I said, I think the momentum is moving in the right direction. The EU it has a lot of initiatives that they're working on. But so I guess to let people know, you're sort of specialized now in the e-bike. You work for one of your biggest kind of collaboration that you do is with Moto.it,
yeah,
and you take care of all of the e-bike side of their.
yeah. Testing basically any new product that comes my way, or I ask for electric two wheels, could be road, off road, could be even little electric scooters.
Sure.
And so everyone's always complaining about those, saying, "Oh, they're really dangerous." And I'm like, "Well, if you're experienced, they're not. If you're unexperienced, yes, they are a bit sketchy. So the stand-up sort of bird type
Yeah, yeah.
scooter thing.
Yeah, and
So
those I mean, can really cut down, they can kind of bring them on a train.
yeah, they're
Um,
amazing, really. If you think
sure.
about that concept, that's a pretty amazing, cool thing. And just testing product and like sort of figuring out what you can do with it is my main aim, because there is good product out there, there's bad product. Everyone's focused on price. It's the consuming nature of us as humans. Like, I want to get something good for as cheap as possible. And unfortunately, the electrics inside an e-bike are kind of expensive. So if you want to buy, I know the pricing, if you want to buy one motor and one battery, which is of good quality and power and torque, you need to spend $1,200 just for those parts.
Motor, battery.
Battery, motor, wiring loom. $1,200.
And you don't even have the bike yet.
No. So I was at a show, and I don't know if you ever go to bike shows, you'll see like there's always a couple of halls dedicated to sort of production from Asia or wherever it is they're from. And there's all these sort of people sat around tables looking for somebody to come and talk to them. And they're sort of in these innocuous booths. And once I went into one and was talking to this motor company guy, I was like, oh yeah, how much are your motors? Like if I want 20,000 of them, how much are they? And they're still $200.
Wow. Yeah, it's complex. I mean, because it's the pedal.
Even if you want 20,000 of them and you can bargain them down.
Sure.
You know?
Well, the pedal assist technology is not simple.
No. So it's very expensive. And then you need a battery, and batteries cost money because of the production. It's really expensive to produce them. So, the cells, if you want good quality cells that can handle being discharged and charged in a safe way for a long time, you need to spend money and have well-designed things. So there's a lot of barriers in the way to, and I did something about this recently, like how cheap could I buy an e-bike? I did that on Moto.it. And I came in at around, I wouldn't want to go lower than about, for a mountain bike, about $1,700. Anything less than that, and you're getting a compromised experience,
Sure.
not what the marketing tells you. Anything that looks like a mountain bike that costs less than 1,700 is basically not a mountain bike. It's a bike that's electric. So you can ride around the road, you can do stuff like that, but you can't ride off-road with it without being compromised technically. A brake, something won't last very long. Tires, wheels, I don't know. You won't be able to ride uphill with it.
That's super interesting because it does sort of put a barrier to entry for the market as of today.
Off-road, yes. Off-road, yes. Urban, you can find cheap bikes for $800, $1,000, sometimes cheaper, but you're getting into sketchy electronics then. So, I mean, so people are like, oh yeah, but what's wrong with these bikes? Well, it's not something you could see. It's not something wrong with it. It's like circuitry design. So if you take a battery and you have your battery, it's sat there doing nothing. It's unplugged, it's sat there. It's not doing nothing. There's a BMS, so that's a battery management system in that circuit board, which is constantly measuring and evaluating the state of the cells. And it's balancing them. And it's got to keep those cells in balance, voltage-wise, whatever. So that's the whole point of the BMS. So when you charge it, it also does the same operation during charging. It does the same operation during discharging. So the quality of that BMS makes a big difference to the stability of that battery cell.
And the life of it.
The life.
Durability. And
so somebody from Bosch told me, I said, why blah, blah, blah about whatever I was talking about at the time. And it said, our battery management systems are the best. He confidently told me they are the best. They have high quality circuit boards. You can sit that battery on the side and it'll be good for 10 years. It won't blow up on you or lose control. It'll be constantly being monitored. So I've got a couple of batteries sat outside, which are dead, don't work anymore. And I leave them outside the house.
Sure, just in case.
You don't know. Because that's another thing that comes down to the right to repair, which is because e-bikes are expensive. So people are like, they're using them, motors are breaking. Over time, I want to fix it. Can I fix my battery? Soldering those batteries is pretty sketchy and difficult to do. You need to weld them, not solder them. There's all kinds of questions there. So you need to have, the EU is coming out with a new law, so making batteries repairable. I'm not sure if it's by the end user or a dealer, but they're going to have to be repairable. Motors need to be repairable, really, in my experience, because they break quite easily. Because when you're outside in the general environment, you've got humidity and dust and dirt. Motors wear, bearings wear, seals break, stuff goes in. You need to be able to replace it. Very few companies do that. Polini, which is an Italian company, they have fully serviceable and replaceable motors, all components between 5 and 10 years. And that's very.
It feels like we're early. It feels like we're still early in all this.
Yeah.
Right?
You should have a, because like at the end of the day, even if I've got a technical car, a gas car, I can still buy. I can go to Volkswagen and say to them, "Hey, can I have this switch, please?"
Sure.
And they'll sell it to you. You know, they will sell it to you. Why not? So e-bike companies don't do that yet, which seems
It's
very
just
anti-consumer.
well, it's sort of a planned obsolescence, or just, once or it's because we're so early in the circuit in the
Yeah.
cycle that it just hasn't gotten to that point yet. I guess I don't know. How do you see it?
Yeah, well, it creates a barrier to entry. This is what I'm getting to, because that means, like, think about used car market. Cars are expensive. You want to fix them. You buy an old car, you can fix it and you can drive it. Every kid wanted a car. I spent like, 1,000 maybe on a car and then fixed it. And then it was drivable, you know? So bikes should be the same. You can get good quality used bikes then, which are fixable and drivable. You buy a cheap brand bike with a no-name motor and no-name battery. Where do you get the spares from?
Sure.
It's a problem. So it's a form of transport that needs, like, to open the market up. It needs better communication, better everything,
So the secondhand market, from what you're seeing, is pretty small, because these bikes they just don't have a very long useful life.
Well, would you trust what I tell you about the battery cycles on your battery that I'm trying to sell you, or from my 3-year-old used bike? I said, "Oh, it's only been charged 5 times." How are you going to check that?
Sure. Well, it's similar to the way that the electric car market is going, how
Yeah.
fast that they're depreciating because of the cost to replace the batteries. So that's a similar situation that you're seeing?
Well, luckily, mountain bikes, you can literally pull the battery, because they're like between 300 and 1,000 watts.
You can just
So
put a
you're
new
not
one in. So it's
put a
not the
new one
battery,
in.
it's the motor.
The motor, the components, the whole thing works together. Some things just, bikes don't work, switch on and switch off for some random reason. And you find it's a really short cable that just needs replacing because it's been exposed to humidity, doesn't work properly. I don't know. The dodgy connector, things wear out mechanically. And you need, or bad design, something burns itself through, or just a simple thing. So a friend of mine who had a very expensive, specialized, lightweight SL mountain bike calls me. He's not really a mountain biker. He bought this. He's in Germany, and he goes, "My bike won't switch on." So I'm like, what is it? And he took a picture of it. I go, "Okay, right. The battery is dead inside your TCU." So the TCU is the control unit with the power switch, which is in the top tube. Remove that, change that battery, and it'll switch on. So he changed the battery, which was one of those sort of watch type batteries.
Sure.
Thing switched on. Now, Googling that, you won't find that information. I just happen to know because, I've had it happen to me. So otherwise, you'd have to go to there's all kinds of little tiny things which are really
Sure.
annoying.
And they're not, but it's not available, not information you're going to find.
No. So it's a classic one with Shimano, calling out the companies here with technical problems. And so if your Shimano e-bike, if it has a powered on-off switch on the frame, if you unplug your battery, or you just don't turn your bike on for a long time, that on-off switch slowly discharges itself. So you come back to use your bike and you try to switch it on. Bike doesn't turn on. You're like, the heck? Now, there is a fix for this, and it's called turn the bike on from the battery, because all Shimano bikes have a power on the battery. So you press that on and the bike will turn on. Unfortunately, some of these Shimano batteries are buried in the frame and you can't get to that switch to turn it on.
And that depends on how it was designed. And
It depends on how it's designed. So unless you know this, or you can invent a way of doing it, I've done it with bits of string with a little bolt sellotape to it, slid down the battery, and then I
Oh,
pull the
wow.
string to switch it on. Or you take your bike to a dealer and they plug it into the computer and they turn it on for. It's ridiculous, you know. There's like
Yeah,
lots of design problems, which you know, because you're working. So somebody said this to me. I think a bike has something like 2,000 parts on it, like from every nut and bolt and nipple and component. There's like 2,000 parts, which is a lot. So making them all work together perfectly is a big task. I have a lot of respect for the bike designers, even though I'm calling out these little issues.
well, I
They're,
mean, I
they
think
got to,
it's fair. And, you know, I think what we could take away from this is just how new this market still is.
yeah, yeah,
And how, yeah, it's just, and it's very different from the enthusiast. What I'm realizing is like the enthusiast market is one thing. This is a whole nother thing. It really
yeah, because
is.
the enthusiast market will know which forum to go on
Right.
to Google to find the problem.
Right. Because their
The,
bottom bracket, you know, is, you
yeah,
know, doing whatever.
creaking or whatever.
Right.
Whereas the average user, person in the street, has no idea, and they just go to the nearest bike shop. But they've now had to do a journey to a bike shop to get it fixed, and that's a problem. It's a bicycle. It should be simple. It shouldn't
But
be,
it's not.
but it's not.
It's
No.
absolutely not. Wow. So I guess one thing that I wanted to get to today when we were
Yeah.
talking was kind of how you represent what is a modern, I guess, embodiment of the what a journalist looks like in cycling, in a sense
Yeah.
that, you know, the traditional journalism has definitely contracted, traditional journalism that we, you know, you and I grew up with. And so for you to be a professional content creator, you're doing a lot of different things. You're doing still doing video, like you
Yeah.
mentioned. You are writing. You're still doing some writing, I suppose,
Yeah.
testing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess from your vantage point, what does it take to kind of be successful today as a journalist or as a content creator in the bike industry that you're, you know, because I think you're one of the, you know, one of the on the bleeding edge of this. So maybe you can
Mhm.
help people kind of understand how you're making it work and maybe what you're seeing.
Diversity. So you've got to be diverse. You've got to be open to everything. As soon as you've got a fixed idea about something, you're wrong immediately.
Why?
So because you're closing yourself off to other opportunities and ideas. You've got to have an open mind. And it's really hard to have an open mind. Everyone thinks, oh, yeah, I have an open mind. I can work in teams and I can do everything. It's like, yeah, reality. Then you start, you know, realizing that you don't have an open mind sometimes with creating ideas or doing stuff. I mean, like, that's how I got into e-bikes. Like, literally, I was working in this magazine and they're like, who wants to test the e-bike? And everyone's like, I don't want to test it. It's horrible. It was just like, everybody was like, I don't want to go anywhere near it. And I was like, yes, please. I'll do that. And that's just because my father said to me, do the jobs nobody else wants to do. You know, that was his kind of outlook on life, education. So I kind of thought, okay, look for the new idea, look ahead. My brain works that way. Figure out what's going on, figure out what people want. Try and simplify it as well. Don't be overcomplicated about it. Don't get dragged off. And don't try and be some warrior trying to take on the world and, you know, cycling media, cycling industry. This is relative to everything. We're not going to change the world. We're not going to, like, if I find a dodgy chain on a bicycle and I write a report saying this chain is really dodgy, like, that's not going to change anything. You know, that's not changing the world. That's just making me look more responsible, maybe in front of the consumer, and then getting shouted at by the brands for calling out something that isn't that important. And it's just an accidental mistake. It's not,
Sure.
you know, so you've got to find the middle way between figuring out how to best tell the consumer what they want, and or what they could do, or what's available, what they can do with what's available, and at the same time, like sort of liaising with the brands, and sort of, because you find people at brands, unless they've been a journalist or they've done what you've done, and there aren't that very many people who have, they don't really know what it's like to produce content, because they're sort of thinking from a different point of view, and obviously they want to sell their product, but they need to know their product is a product in a big sea of products. So there has to be like an approach for your product, which is going to make it stand out above the rest. It could be the brand name alone. It could be a feature. It could be, lucky marketing. It could be having a pro rider who does something interesting. There's so many different ways that, so if you're trying to like create content around that, it's a really difficult thing to nail down, to say, hey, if you do this, you can create that. I mean, I just put up a video on my excuse me, on my own YouTube channel, top 5 motors of 2024. Okay, now I've ridden every single one of those motors, I know, and I've ridden like lots of motors. So when you're trying to do media and you're just producing listicles, which are then just regurgitating press releases and features to get views, because that's a clickbaity title, the top 10, because for some reason people like to know what's the best. I mean, that's what they like to know. Then if you don't have any experience to that, your article or your video will slowly die, or it won't go anywhere, because you don't have the experience. If you've got the experience and you've got video footage, which I have, and I've made some of it off my own back, some of it paid to do, and then reuse it on that video, and then talk about it with authority and experience and knowing this, and then you don't try and dwell on, so top 5 motors, what do you talk about? So I stayed on 1 or 2 points on every motor. What's the best motor? I said the Bosch Race CX, brilliant motor, loads of power, incredible motor, but you can only buy it on bikes that are 10,000 euros or more, or 8,000. So it's kind of out of reach for most people, And then I put this thing up, and then the second motor, I said, well, the Shimano EP801, amazing motor. You can buy that on much cheaper bikes. Thing is, it's only available from 2024 and on, Those 2 points, I just picked 2 points for each motor. The Polini, I put it at number 5, because it's an amazingly powerful motor. It's really good, but yet it's really repairable. That's one of the amazing things about that motor. You've got that, you can have that for a lifetime, And then there was a lightweight motor I talked about, and various things. Anyway, so somebody wrote to me, oh, you didn't talk about the Yamaha motor. And I said, well, look, they're reliable, but it didn't stand out with a feature that has these features have. So you've got to sort of sift through the data and try and figure out, based on your own experience, what are the key points, and then you can tell that to the consumer. And then,
so that's sort
that
of,
video's got massive,
and that's sort of like there's no shortcuts, because people do talk about being able to potentially, like you said, kind of regurgitate a listicle, or use ChatGPT. Like, you just, it doesn't work that way. That's the experience I've had as well. And in a sense that, like, you really do have to like create something that's interesting. There's no way around it. Nothing.
The best use of AI I've ever done. I go into AI, one of the bots, and I go, write me an article about this. I just want to try it. So it pulled up the article, it wrote it, and then it referenced where it's got its data on. It referenced me and another one of my friends. I was just like, oh my goodness, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, but it really isn't, like, there's just no way around it. Like, regardless, you really do have to have something that stands out, because if you're not doing that, people smell it.
Yeah. I've noticed something in the algorithm recently. I don't know if it's true. Maybe somebody at Google who's listening to this can tell me that an unedited, uncut short in vertical. So you just start the video at a point, you shoot it with whatever camera it is, but then you started at a point of the video and you ended at another point and you don't do any editing or anything and you upload that, that gets more views than a curated, edited
Oh yeah,
vertical,
absolutely.
which is really bizarre because then you spend all these shorts, shorts, or reels, let's make all this work properly. So you spend all these hours editing and making it look good. And then guess what? It gets no views.
No,
Unless it's some super crazy meme that the kids are watching, you know?
it comes down to, at least from what I'm seeing, is it just has to be something that just grabs people's attention. And when people see something that's polished, they immediately think you're trying to sell them something.
Yeah,
They
exactly.
immediately think you're trying to sell them something.
Yeah.
I
So
think
you've
that
got to know stuff and not edit it. And it has to be real and on the point, you know?
brands haven't figured this stuff out.
I don't know. Or maybe if they, some have, like, there's open-minded people out there that listen and do stuff, you know? Like, I know you've had him on your podcast, Basti from Liat.
Sure, Bastion.
He's a cool guy. He knows his stuff. And he's, you know, he's helping grow through his, you know, business he's working with. He helps people do media, you know, and sponsors channels and things like that, even small ones. Because there's this thing about micro influencers, you know, but they're still a micro influencer, still got to have 1,000 people or more. But people are listening to them. But it's, I don't even like the word influencer because then you're getting into this thing like the famous people literally just selling you cake.
Well, it's a label, and I think that with these with these smaller communities, it's just distribution at the end of the
Yeah.
day.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, it's how do you, what is the best way to, like, word of mouth is always and has always been the best way to share an experience. If you want something authentic, real, and direct, that somebody's going to believe in. So from one day to the next, you've got to say, okay, so I went on holiday and I went to this restaurant. It was amazing.
And that's the most believable, right? So
Yeah.
this is an interesting topic. It's like you've got the brand saying that it's great, your friend saying that it's great, and then there's all that area in between, right? Where the micro influencer is not your friend, but that's not the brand, right? And I think that's where the work that you're doing, where you're able to candidly and genuinely, without towing some sort of agenda,
Yeah.
review these products. And I think that that's what brands are looking for. And, you know, coming back to what we said before, but it has to be genuine.
And if you are paid by a brand or supported by a brand in some way with regard to that product, they may say to you, hey, we want you to review this product. So you go, okay, cool, I'll review it. And they might say to you, so everyone wants to know if people are paid for on the internet.
Rightly
To
so.
say what they want to say.
Rightly so.
And as a consumer, and I think you have to look outside the bike industry to figure out the best way to do it to keep everybody like honest. And I think there's a brand on tech, so on called Linus Tech Tips. I don't know if you've seen it.
Of course, yeah.
Or Gamers Nexus is another one. And if you're into IT and stuff, so they make it very clear. LG sent us this TV today and wanted to support this video, so we can tell you about it. Boom, that's in the line at the beginning.
Sure.
And then they're creative and they talk about the TV and they show, they don't review it.
But it's objective.
Fine.
And it's
that's
objective.
Clear. That's fine. That's fine. That's like, but you can't, now, I don't call people out by name, but I could, who pretend to view bikes, but they're paid to do it.
It happens. Like, I mean, I think Marquez Brownlee is another one that, I mean, he's destroyed some companies like Rivian, or not Rivian, it was Fisker. And the pin, I can't remember what it's called, but I don't know if have you had the opportunity to
destroy companies?
Yeah, create problems for companies. I mean, I suppose you don't have quite the scale as Market.
I don't have the scale, so no one's really going to listen to me, really, are they?
Well, yeah,
no. I have had the opportunity. So, but it's like, the thing is, I learned from those who've gone before me from the old media, that you can't be too hot-headed about everything.
It's a small world too.
Yeah. So
It's a
like,
very small world.
I'll give you an example. I rode out of the bike park with a brand new, not bike park, where the bikes were parked. Brand new Focus e-bike back in 2015 or 14, and rode out, and with next to me is Mike, the owner of Focus Bikes. Me and him are riding along, and I shift, and the chain goes into the rear wheel. The derailleur rips off, and I break the frame, break the chain, break everything. Whole bike, like,
Dead.
just throw it away. Like, and I'm right next to the boss and the owner of Focus mountain bikes. So I'm like, oh, and he's like, oh. And we have literally pedaled 25 yards out of the door. We haven't been anywhere. We're on asphalt.
And
I did nothing dodgy. Right.
What happened?
The chain was too short. Somebody made an error and left out 2 links on the chain. So when it shifted, it got caught on the last cog of the cassette and caused the chain to sort of get mangled inside, and the front of the derailleur to go forward and get caught in the wheel and the spoke, and it went around and ripped off. So, now that was a setup problem. So one of the tech guys who built the bikes, member of staff, made an error on the length of chain.
It happens.
So it would be very unfair of me to write anything about that.
Doesn't make sense. Yeah.
Because that's not the product's problem, because that has happened one time,
It's not indicative of the product.
No. However, sometimes if you look at, but if that was, say, okay, so there was an article in The Guardian last week about electric mountain bikes and Bosch. They were attacking Bosch because they break with lots of water ingress and they need to be more repairable and everything like that. And I'm like, okay, they're bringing a good point that e-bike motors need to be more repairable and cheaper to get hold of the parts rather than have to replace the whole motor. That's a reasonable point. But trying to keep water out of a motor is very, very difficult.
Sure.
Now, some of those motors are older motors where they weren't good at it, but modern motors, they're better. Should you call out Bosch like that? If I'm a journalist at the top of The Guardian, I pick up the phone and I call Bosch and I say, hey, can you tell me what's going on? Rather than some kind of hit piece, which seems a bit, because the bike industry is small. Everyone thinks it's big, but it's actually quite small.
Oh no, it's really small.
And
Very
it's full.
niche.
It is full of very, very nice people. It's very
Passionate people.
Rare that I've met somebody who's not nice. And they care about their job. I mean, look, take Nuke Proof that went bust, who are owned by, well, they didn't go bust, but what's it called?
Nuke Proof was part of Wiggle.
Chain Reaction Cycles.
Right. Yeah.
Went bust. They were still, the staff there were still working and posting and doing stuff right up until the last moment.
Sure.
Even though their jobs were in jeopardy and they knew that it was the end, they were still working hard. It's full of good people. The industry is like not, and they care about wanting to get stuff. There's very rarely that I've met somebody who's just like a cowboy,
Sure, but you don't pull punches though when it comes to design, I assume.
No, I mean, but then it's like, so, okay, if somebody's selling me an enduro bike and it can't do enduro, I'll say I wouldn't do enduro. It still rides a bike, it's still a bike that works.
Sure.
But if you're selling me as an enduro bike and it doesn't do enduro, I won't say it will do enduro. I think that's a much fairer approach. Like, what can you really do with a product?
Sure. Yeah. And and a lot of these products wouldn't be at market. They've got their uses, there's appropriate
I think you've got to be
performance.
realistic, about
Yeah.
what you can do with a product. If you're trying to, like these AI pins that, they're trying to sell you an idea that you've got a human on your chest that you can take over from you, and then it doesn't do anything. Humane, that was the name of it.
Humane.
And
Yep. Humane. I have. Yep.
then you've got a problem,
Right.
So if you're saying, hey, we're selling a little pin that you press it and it might do something, if you actually literally say that in your
And it doesn't.
marketing, it might do something.
Fair.
Okay. So I think people have to have realistic ideas of what's possible with stuff. And a bicycle at the end of the day has to have two wheels, they have to go around, you have to stop, it has to be safe, and it has to work for this intended purpose. And now they have categories even, so weight limits, and there's like, is it a 3 category or 4 category? 5 is like free ride and downhill. 4 is enduro, 3 is trail. There's different categories now which are being stamped on the bikes, and if those are realistic, then the problem is there's so much information really attached to a product now that it's almost like you don't want to blind people with data. That's why can you boil it? So the secret is, can you boil down a product to a couple of points?
Well, and that's the service you're providing.
That's what I'm doing.
Right.
That's my key now.
Yeah,
Boil it down to a couple of points.
And
And
it
if you want
feels
to know
like
more, I'll do more. But it's
Sure.
like, that's another video.
but it feels like your business, if you want to call it that, is strong, and it feels like that there's demand for it.
So far, it can all go wrong.
Fingers crossed. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I actually want, I think the role of this, what I do is like, can you unify the consumer with the manufacturer, bring them together and
Sure.
make sure both people are
In an
happy?
objective way.
Are both people happy? As a consumer happy with, look, selling a product to a consumer and having it go wrong must be a really stressful experience.
Well, and I think people are they're just intrinsically, wary of what a brand says. It's just the way it is, man. And we need people in the middle like you, to translate it in an objective way, like you and Marquez Brownlee and so I mean,
Marquez Brown is way more important than me.
But you're doing the same thing. I mean, it's
but
like
we are doing the same thing.
You are.
I mean,
you are.
He could reach into his pocket and install $125,000 of panels on the roof, but he didn't say if he was sponsored for that. I want to know, did he pay for those panels? He has a $5 a month electricity bill for powering his car, home, and everything. I'm like, okay, did you really pay for that yourself, or did you was that sponsored? I think Marcus Brown is very good, but there are he's not super clear on what's sponsored content and what's not.
Right. And that should be probably
that should be made
clearer. Sure.
Linus Tech Tips, absolutely clear.
Okay.
Sure.
And those are people that you sort of look up to, and
I think they're good. I don't think everybody will like their personalities. Like, somebody might like Brownlee and somebody might not like Linus Tech Tips because they're different characters. They can come across in different ways, and not everybody can gel with those characters, so they won't watch them, And then they'll have somebody like Gamers Nexus, who's really like sort of the free rider of computers, let's call it, but who's super techie, who'll call them all out for doing badly. And then he called out Asus for having really bad surface for handheld gaming consoles. They had some terrible warranty problems. That was a general consumer thing, and he went straight in, nailed down. But they've got enough money that they got lawyers as well. So if they do say
it's
something,
a different level, yeah.
It's a very different one. So, at the end of the day, everyone loves to use the word, well, I've forgotten the word even. It's apparently, or it could be, or allegedly. There's the word. Allegedly, when they say something to try and cover themselves from a lawyer, I mean, maybe they could say, based on the information we've said or we've seen, would be a better way of doing it. We can say this, this, and this, and this, but we're open for more information. That's the thing. Like, every product is constantly a product in development. If you talk to a designer, you realize that they have to draw a line at some point and say, right, this is the product we're releasing.
Send it.
Because they're passionate about their job. They want to keep
Sure.
designing and designing and designing and innovating
Proving,
and
yeah.
getting to a better level. And there's bikes out there which are incredible, but you'll find out that the designer could have done this and that, this and that, but then it would have taken another few more years to get it to production. So, you know, I think bike designers are pretty cool, but at the same time, they have a bit of a difficult job. I really think that managing it is pretty hard, you know? And I mean, I know a couple of them personally, and they are really amazing, like what they've done, you know? But they had to have a relationship with whoever they were selling the idea to to produce that product. It's like, so Specialized, they started off by taking drill batteries and taking their electric bike across the Atlantic to Specialized headquarters to show them, oh, this is what an e-bike. Then they went to the local store, bought loads of drill batteries, plugged them into the e-bike so they had a battery they could use, and then they rode it around the car park and showed them. They're like, oh wow, you know. So, and then they understood, and then they thought, right, now it's Specialized, so they have to have a high quality, good looking product. So they went all in, but that requires, I was told, 7-figure investment on the production line. So they had to spend millions to create the machinery, to create the systems that they wanted in their system, you know? So when somebody says, oh, this bike costs, I don't know, 10, 20% more than the rest, then you're like, well, that's because they've spent a massive amount of money on investment, you know, to
Sure.
produce that. And there's jobs in the middle, there's people jobs, you know, and things need doing. So I think the companies could communicate a little bit better about actually what's involved maybe in their
Sure.
production, because bike prices got silly, but that was the high end bike prices got silly. The low end was always well priced. There was always a product for the bottom end of the market. And the top end got higher and higher and higher and higher. But that's kind of it's like cars. You can buy a Bugatti Veyron if you want, but you need 3 million, you know. You can buy used F40, but you'll need 5 million. You can buy a McLaren F1, the original car, but you'll need 25 million.
Yeah, maybe more.
You know, you can just keep going. So complaining about bike prices, which is of high end stuff. But I mean, if we get down to the crux of it, you can buy now a bike at even now, especially there's loads of discounts around. You buy like a bike between $4,000 and $6,000 euros or whatever that will be epic and will do something for years to come and will perform amazingly. Now that bike
10 years
10
ago.
years ago
Right.
would have cost 10 grand.
Yeah, at least. Yeah.
So companies have innovated. They brought prices down. Your expectations went up, you know?
Well, like I said, I think what you're doing is really important work, and I'm glad that you're able to make it work and have a life. You live in Florence, right? Near Florence.
Yeah.
So
Side hustles as well, though. That never stopped.
you can never. Well, it sounds like it's in your DNA. So
I teach photography at the local university as well. A couple of hours a week. Got a class. That's great fun. I love that. So
you sound a borderline ADD. If I had to get
probably. I don't know. My mind is under control, but I have a lot of enthusiasm, and it's like I love watching what people do and create, and I like to try and tell the world about it, to be honest, because there's so many amazing people doing amazing things out there, you know. And I know the marketing people are hard worked at these brands though, because you send them a message and they're struggling. They've got 150, 200 emails a day to answer.
Of course.
They need AI.
Well, but again, like I said, the content that you're providing, provided it's,
Yeah.
assuming that they're making good products, like you're going to get the word out, and people are looking for people like you, to tell them to kind of pass it on. So I think that's really cool. Thanks.
I mean, I'm always open for brands to send me product. I don't need to be paid to make a review. Just send me the bike, send me the stuff.
Sure, because the more
I'll
content you can put out, it's
Yeah.
a service you're doing, and people are happy to see it and kind of the wheel spins that way.
And if I can't put it on the big channels that I work with, I can put it on my own personal channel.
Sure.
And that seems to be getting traction anyway. So, because it's okay. So anyway.
So if people want to find you, where can they find you, Alex?
Alex Biketester on Instagram and on YouTube, or you can Google Moto.it and write Alex Boyce and that will appear. Or you can just type Alex Boyce MTB into Google and you'll get like the whole history of my work going back like 10 years. It's kind of interesting.
Doing the good work, the bike testing work.
Yeah, it's been fun. It's kind of unbelievable. And there's many of us out there. But you wouldn't know. There's quite a few of us. But it's a small community. But there's quite a lot of us, and they're all. There's not just me. I talk to them every day from other rival brands and rival things, rival magazines and things like that, and they've all got something valuable to say, and we share ideas between each other, and it's cool, but it's not easy. Maybe I sound too enthusiastic that everyone thinks it's easy, but it's not.
Well, thanks, Alex, for coming on. It was
Thank
great
you.
talking to you today, man.
Thank you for having me.